My dad did some announcing at the Jamestown Speedway. When I turned 16 years old, the day I turned 16 years old, I got my learner's permit. 1 week later, I had my driver's license. My dad caught me one day doing a little racing on the road, and he said, "We're going to build a car, and you're going to go out to Jamestown Speedway, and those old guys are going to teach you a thing or two." And they did. I had a wonderful time for 3 years about. I ran out there almost every Sunday.
How would you describe the track?
Well, I don't need to close my eyes. I can see it right here, sitting here. But if we were going to run the track to get the best lap time, you would come down past the start-finish line, against the rail, the fence there, right into the first turn very high, put the car into a drift, and then mash it right to the floor again and head for the bottom of the second turn. And then you would drift out from there to the outside of the track again and take turn 3 very high, get your car into just a little drift, and then nail it and head for the bottom of turn 4. And that was the quickest way around that track. But in turn number 2, you had to be very careful because there was a series that was like 3 little roller coaster bumps in it, and you would hit them pretty hard, and it would give you a good throw. You know, you had to really watch what you were doing in turn number 2. And there was no fencing, there was no rails after you got into turn number 1. All the way around that track, and you'd pick them up coming into turn number 4. And the rest of it was just open. And many people went straight off turn number 1 right out into the jingweeds there. That happened. I did myself. Straight out in there. There was not much of a bank to that track. There was some, but I couldn't tell you what degree it was. It was not significant though. So you can race a lot faster on a half-mile track than you can a third of a mile track. But a third of a mile is more exciting for the crowd because they're banging, crashing.
Father had this probably signed for you.
He bought insurance for me through Lloyd's of London.
Really? What was your car? You said it was a Hudson. What was your car number?
Number 5. Number 5 was the number I used. There, you have pictures of it, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
We would have usually 3 heats and a consolation, a semifinal, and then a feature race, which was usually 25 laps. 1954 till 1957. Just before they closed that track in 57, they had put power down there, and they tried to shorten the track. They come around through the infield and tried to make it a shorter track and tried to do some nighttime racing, but it never kicked off. Fred Knapp, he drove a car that was owned by Bilquist and Tyler Excavating, I think it was. Freddie, he drove for Julian Busink. He drove for lots of people. Carl Pentagra always had a cigar in his mouth. When he was racing, he was chewing on a cigar. He lived down around South Dayton, I think. The last year that I was monkeying around, I think he got a 57 fuel-injected Chevy, I think, if I remember right. We called him the Crasher. You know, he was a hard guy to race with. And towards the end there, he bought 1955 or 56. He bought a couple of DeSoto Fire Dome V8s, and he was running one of them, and Dale Kincaid was running I don't know if Dale bought it from him or if he was driving it for Bob, but he had those. Bob was a hard guy. Sammy Lamb Cuso, Smiling Sam, the modified man. He just a good guy. Sam was a good guy to race. Kenny, I don't remember racing with him at Jamestown Speedway, but his dad, Gus, was a real Hudson mechanic. He had a garage down here on Harrison Street called Champion Garage. There was him and John Seeley and Paul Wilson. They used to call Jim the skinny little guinea with the meatball eyes, you know. Jim Pollaro was another fun guy to be racing with, you know. And Jim was a buddy of mine for years and years, right up until the day he died. The best Jim Pollaro stories were not racing at Jamestown Speedway, but Jim had a 1940 Ford Coupe. This he drove on the road. Had about a full race Mercury engine with a big GMC blower that stuck right up through the hood. Now this is back in the 50s, you know. He had flames painted all over the front of that car, and it was light blue in color. And his big thing with that was out at Wattsburg, the drag strip out there. But he drove that thing all over town, had tires on the back this wide, you know, and he, Jim was a lot of fun to be around if you could put up with his language. He had a tendency to swear a little bit. He was a flagman, and he did some racing. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think. I know he raced at Jamestown Speedway. Bruce Clark from Angola. He ran at Jamestown Speedway almost every Sunday. Almost every Sunday. Dick Sack.
Yep.
His parents owned Sack Brothers gravel pit up there at Bemis Point. I think Jack Hansen and Bob Wanowich and Dick Sack built that car that he was running. That was strictly a modified.
They were from Buffalo, they were from Angola. Basically, what drew them to drive all the way down to Jamestown Speedway to race? Was it money?
There was no money there. The money was minimal. We loved racing. Yeah. We liked racing. That's all there was to it. If you could stay ahead of your expenses, you were very lucky. Most people couldn't stay ahead of the expenses. I was very fortunate because my dad was a fabulous fabricator. He could weld anything and, you know, put me back together. Oh, hard luck, Pete. I think he was hooked up with Al Tranello or something on the track. I didn't have a lot of success, but I won a few races and I did a lot of seconds and thirds. Financially, no. We just stayed with the program was all. I think State Line Speedway was what put the kibosh to Jamestown Speedway. And it may not have, except one Sunday, they ran a daytime race at State Line Speedway, and they just took, there was nobody left at Jamestown, and the crowd that went to State Line never came back. Buck Lilienthal. He owned Lilienthal Speed Shop, right. And in 1954, Buck and Wendell Anderson and Don Short. Do you know Don Short? He was the service manager at Volkswagen here for years. They bought a brand new 54 Ford and made a race car out of it and drove it to Mexico and participated in the Pan American Road Race.
Wow, I'll be darned.
And they, which started in the bottom of Mexico and ran back to Juarez, and I think it took 5 days. They would run timed segments, but yeah, Buck there, he used to come out and play around out there a little bit.
So you talked about that Dave Shaw's car had an extra radiator.
Oh,
How did
yeah.
that work?
Those weren't his cars. Those belonged to Denny Wilder. And Denny Wilder would use a standard type radiator, but he also would put a radiator in, would be on the passenger side of the car. He had a framework built in there, and I don't know what type of fan he used. He must have used some type of a fan. And they would pump the water through the original radiator, or the original type radiator. It would come back and go through this other radiator and then back to the engine. It would seem to me it would get awful damn hot in that car to be running, but I don't know. They never complained about it. There was a slit right in the side of the car, about that long, and they would bow it out, you know, so like an air scoop, right into that radiator. Pete Cusimano was kind of a genius back in those days about building things. He was right up till the day he died. But you had to get in and manually, you know, you couldn't, it wasn't any high-speed stuff like they do now, but if the car was sitting still and you had plenty of time, you could go in with a ratchet or an adjustable wrench or anything. It just, you had to turn that screw up or down.
You were part of the Joey
Sherwood Thrill Show.
How did that happen?
Well, they had, it would be Labor Day at Chautauqua County Fair. Mm-hmm. They had a bunch of guys with the thrill show that had a drinking problem, and they got fired. Well, Whitey Rupp from Fredonia and Arden Putney, who owned Parkett Motors. Yep. Well, Arden Putney and Joey Chitwood Sr. were pretty good friends. And in fact, I shouldn't say in fact because I'm not certain about this, but I understand that Joey Chitwood ran the Southwestern Auto Leasing Agency for Putney in Florida. This is what I understand. But anyhow, Whitey Rupp come around and said, look, Chetwood needs to hire some guys, and if you're interested, he used to hang out down at the Jamestown Speedway. If you're interested, come and see me at such and such. So we did. Myself and Jim Anderson and one other guy. And they took us on, and we did some of the not so pretty things, you know, like sliding on our butt through the rings of fire and stuff like that. And you did a little bit of the ski driving, but that was it. You didn't do any of the big fancy stuff.
How much did you get made? How much did you make?
$20 a show.
Wow.
And now we're talking 1956. And some days you would do 2 shows, a matinee and an evening show. So that's $40 a day times 7 days a week. That's $280. People working in factories were making $75 or $80 a week. So that was big money for me. But you see them walking with a cane now. All this stuff eventually catches up with you. My back is so bad that there's nothing they can do with it anymore. That's all from doing crap like that. And not only that, but my horses, my Harleys. I can tell you something that has always amazed me. Vern Finelli used to stand with his stopwatch, and he had 2 points on that front stretch at Jamestown Speedway, and he would stand on the infield there with his damn stopwatch, and he would tell me consistently that every time you go through this loop, you are just touching 100 miles an hour. And I always thought, well, I don't think that's possible. But I know where he was talking about, there was not another RPM left in my engine. It was just big. But I still cannot get it in my head that you would get 100 miles an hour on that dirt track. I can't. But Vern insisted on it, and he would tell me that time after time after.
Flagged at Jamestown?
Art flagged at Jamestown, yeah.
You mentioned Dick Ostrom earlier.
Yeah.
Did he have a role out there? What was his
He would
role?
bring a tow truck out there.
Oh,
and stuff.
okay.
He was always out there with equipment in case.
Okay.
Yeah. Him and his dad, Gus, owned the Esso gas station at Kimmelstand, which is now a convenience store on the corner there. I think Lake County was in there. Somebody, I haven't been around here much lately, so. But right there used to be an Esso gas station, and it was Gus and Dick Ostrom that owned that. And they had a tow truck, and they had whatever else, and they brought their equipment out to the track there. Sunday afternoon. I think if you won $50 on a feature win, you were making a lot of money. My dad to change the camber on our right front, he would take the upper control arm and cut out about ½ inch, weld it back together and fish blade it, and then you'd get that right front wheel cocked out about the way you wanted it. The other thing is, a lot of guys used to, I don't know why they did it, but probably they didn't know any better. They would compress the left side of the car right down as far as they could get it and chain that right down to the frame so the car sat like that. Well, we never did. My dad monkeyed with spring rates and shock absorbers, and that's how we did it. But you'd go up there and these guys are all cocked off sideways and bouncing around like that, and it just never made sense to me. They did pretty well. They bumped me around a few times. You got some pictures, I think, of a Hudson Commodore that I used to race. The right or left rear quarter on that stove in pretty doggone good, you know. They let me know that you're in my way. But I used to drive that Hudson, that green one, right to the races, most generally. Clarence Hagelin owned Hagelin Dibble. They would throw a dealer's plate at me and say, here, drive around a little bit, you know. So that thing was a screamer. But you know, I ran that car for 2 years out there, and I don't think there was more than 1 or 2 little dents in that car. They were a military type seatbelt. My dad bought them at Gus Chilly's Army Navy surplus store. They were about this wide with a metal hook that came across and went into a hook here, and you shoved it down, and there was like 2 ball bearings spring-loaded that held that right in there. One day in one of his roadsters, he come out of the 4th turn at Jamestown Speedway, and he bumped that, and his damn seatbelt came off. Well, he's trying to get it fastened back up, and he went right out in the woods off the 1st turn there. I had a Cromwell helmet, and I bought that at Lilienthal's Speed Shop in East Randolph, New York, and it cost $25. And Cromwell was the big helmet maker in those days. They were a fiberglass helmet, but they were leather over your ears and leather strap. They were fiberglass covered with white leather with a little visor. And we had door straps. They were a nylon strap about this wide that you just cranked your windows down, and then right around the doorpost you strapped that so the doors wouldn't come open on you. Some of these guys took all the glass out of their car except the windshield, you know. And those windshield, of course, with the safety glass, it's like a film that's in between 2 layers of glass. So you can take a heck of a blow on the windshield and nothing comes through it. It just kind of spider webs it. Yeah. We had a single roll bar right behind me, reinforced to the back with the your roll bar would go in like this, and then you had angular pieces welded from there back to the back. Yeah, that's what we had. And that beautiful green Hudson, I was coming out of the fourth turn at Jamestown Speedway, and I don't know how this guy ahead of me got turned around. But we hit right head on. Never had a chance to get my foot off the accelerator. And I was right on it because from the time you leave the third turn, you're right back on the floor again, wide open, right to the bottom of the fourth turn. And I was just coming out of that, and this freaking car was turned right around in front of me. And I drilled him right head on, and the guy got me right square in the back. And it kind of bowed the car up in the middle, you know. It just, I mean, that was the end of that car. It just, you couldn't do anything with it. So, our adjoining county, Polk County is our adjoining county, and the sheriff there, his name is Grady Judd. And about 10 years ago, now this is how Grady Judd is. About 10 years ago, somebody shot and killed one of the deputies, killed the dog, wounded another deputy. Well, about 3 or 4 days later, they found this guy in an orange grove. Well, he started popping a few shots at him. So Grady Judd sends in his SWAT team. Well, they ended up, the guy took a shot at them and they finished it off. So they're interviewing Grady Judd the next day on television, and they said, "Sheriff Judd, what do you think about your deputies shooting that man and killing him?" And Grady Judd says, "Well, he killed one of my deputies, killed one of my dogs, wounded another deputy. But Sheriff Judd, what do you think about them shooting him 68 times? And he says, "That's all the bullets they had." That's Sheriff Grady Judd.
Well, thank you, Sherwood. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sherwood. I appreciate it. Your memory is unbelievable.
Well,
I tell you.
Are you recognizing anybody? Anything?
no, I don't. There's Stinky. There was Stinky Caprino.
Yeah, Tony Caprino, Sammy Mancuso.
There's Dorothy.
Yeah.
So what are we looking at here? That's behind Tony and Sammy.
Yeah, I don't.
So that's your car?
That's my old Hudson Commodore there. It's got the Tranello sticker up on the top there.
Yep.
See right there?
Yep.
Erickson Oil Company was right next to Hagelin Dibble up there, and Erickson used to give me Pennzoil.
Right.
And there was a Pennzoil sticker right up there.
Who would have guessed? There you go.
See that sticker right there?
Yeah.
That's Pennzoil.